Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for joining us today. I'm Betsy Wood with the Alaska Department of Health, and again today, if those of you have been attending our webinars and office hours over the last few weeks, again today I'm joined by a number of members on the Department of Health leadership team, as well as some of our partners over at the Alaska Community Foundation. Again, we're going to be walking through the letter of interest process, the letter of interest portal, giving a little bit of an overview of how to use that letter of interest portal. And we'll be answering questions. We'll be spending the same time doing the same sort of thing we've been doing the last few weeks, which is answering questions that folks have. And I see people are still kind of joining into the webinar, so we will wait for just a few moments before we really get into the heart of it. But I did want to start out with a few quick reminders. One is that this is our final scheduled office hours session for this initial letter of interest window. So we really appreciate the time, especially those of you who are frequent flyers and have been with us every week. We appreciate the questions coming in and the opportunity to answer everybody's questions in preparation for engaging in this letter of interest process for the Rural Health Transformation Program. We know many of you are actively working on these letters, and we wanted to remind you that you have until Wednesday, next Wednesday, March 11th at 5 p.m. Alaska time to finish submitting your letters of interest and engaging in that registration process through the Alaska Community Foundation portal. So if you are planning to submit a letter of interest, you still have a little over a week, but I would recommend that you don't wait until the last half an hour to submit your letter of interest and complete your registration. You want to build in just a little bit of time in case you need some technical assistance with those final pieces. So rest assured, you don't need to submit today. You do have a little more time, but do make sure that you give yourself enough time to finish that out. So today, like I said, we'll be following a format that's fairly similar to what we've done in prior weeks. We'll start with a reminder of a kind of walkthrough of that letter of interest portal to make sure that everyone understands how to navigate the system and has a sense of what type of information is being requested. I will share after that a little bit of an update on some of the new resources and information that we've been putting on our website. Call attention to that for you all. And then we'll move into the question and answer portion of our time together. So with that, I'm going to ask Jen Cross from the Alaska Community Foundation to kind of take over and give us a little bit of a walkthrough of that letter of interest portal again and just reorient everybody to the process.
Thank you, Betsy. And my pleasure to fill in for Megan Cassiola. She's the VP of our programs and grants here at the Alaska Community Foundation. I'm a program officer here and happy to do the walkthrough of our portal. And I'll start by sharing my screen. Okay, so the best way to get started with submitting your letter of interest is to go to the Rural Health Transformation Program Department of Health webpage. And this is easily accessed. You can just Google RHTP DOH. The first option is the correct one. And I want to point out that, as Betsy mentioned, there have been other office hours. Then those recordings are available on this web page. And in those recordings from February 17th and the 24th, we go into great detail about the LOI process and technical aspects about submitting your LOI and getting registered with us. So I'm going to show you right now where that is located on this page. I'll scroll down. It's down towards the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to show you where it is because I highly recommend watching these webinar recaps, particularly February 17th and the 24th. So if you haven't already, please do so. So now you've watched those recaps and you're ready to submit your LOI. There's multiple places on this webpage where there's a button that'll bring you to our portal. This is one of them. And so I'll just go to the top again. All right, you're at the top. So right here, register and submit your LOI. And then again, down where the Funding Opportunities and Applicant Information Center title is, you'll see this one. So click on that button and it'll bring you to our portal. And so I'm actually already logged in. So let me just go to the home page here. Okay, so this is what you're going to see. Sorry, I just bounced around a bit, but I want to make sure that I'm showing you exactly what you're going to see. And the first opportunity on our opportunities page will be the Rural Health Transformation Letter of Interest, and you're going to click apply. And then if you're already registered with us, then it will take you to this application. You'll get started right away. If you're not already registered with us, I'm actually just going to sign out real quick. Sorry about that. So we'll go here. I'm just going back in time here. Okay, so this is what you're going to see. Click apply, and it's going to take you to this registration page. And Megan went into great detail about creating an account in the February 17th office hours recap. So if you're not known to us, you're going to have to create a new account. But if you already have your login credentials, you'll log on here. One thing that we go through and we get a lot of inquiries about are if we already have an existing entity in our system, then you can't duplicate that entity and create a new profile for them. So you're going to run into an error message if, let's say, ANTHC, that's the entity you're wanting to submit an LOI under. So in that case, when you're trying to register, you're going to come up with an error message, and you will email us, and we'll get you all set up with that registration. So that's very critical. We're monitoring this inbox regularly. If you run into any issues with registering, email us at rhtp@alaskacf.org. So alaskacf.org. All right, so I'm just going to log in and go into applicant mode. Okay, so here we go, apply. Now you're registered and you're going to be filling out your application. And Megan goes into great detail on the February 17th webinar about filling out this form, and it's mostly drop downs and selections. The one thing she mentioned in the February 24th office hours recording is about the sam.gov registration UEI number drop down. And this is important. So if you have a UEI number, great. You'll just say yes. But if your situation is that you're applying for one and haven't received it yet, you would click this response. And if you're not in the process of applying for one, you click the no, and I am interested in assistance registering for one. And something that is important to know is that if you do not have your UEI number by the March 11th deadline, you will not be able to receive federal funding through this first opportunity process. So if you're for those that have applied for one and are waiting for that to come through, we just suggest that you fill out your application, but maintain it in draft mode. And then hopefully that will come through by the March 11th deadline, and then you'd submit that. And so I'm not going to go into each one of these questions. We're going to focus on other aspects for this office hours. But I'm just going to slowly go through. If you're you may be the applicant, but you're not the primary contact. This is where you would say no, and then you would enter the primary contact's information, as well as if you're not the fiscal contact associated with this application, you would select no and provide that information. Something that also would get a lot of inquiries about is wanting multiple people to have access to this LOI, and to be able to contribute to it and potentially edit it and submit it. That is possible in multiple ways. What we suggest people do is go to the top of the page and click on this collaborate button. So you can add as many collaborators, you can invite as many collaborators as you'd like. If they're not already registered in our system, if they decide to say yes to the collaboration invite, they will have to create an account with us. But once they do that, then they will be brought to the LOI and be able to contribute. If you chose that they can edit, or you can say they can submit. Basically, you get to decide what kind of permissions that person or that person will have. So either like the folks that can edit won't be able to submit. The folks that have this submit option will be able to edit and submit.
Jen,
So,
I just wanted to chime in with just a few things. One, I think I may have said a deadline that wasn't quite correct as far as the timing. I just want to clarify for everybody that these LOIs are open through March 11th, and the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Alaska time. So you got the whole day. I think I may have just misspoke. And then I just also wanted to briefly touch on the UEI thing, because I know that we've gotten a lot of questions from people who are registering, who are getting engaged in asking for federal funding for maybe one of the first times, and they're trying to understand, how do I get in here? How does this work? And I really just want to highlight for people, if you are in the process of getting a UEI, or you're trying to understand what to do to kind of get this organizational number, Jen, I think you mentioned earlier that they can email the ACF group as far as getting technical assistance on this component, and we have some information. I would really say, if you are at all struggling in this space, send an email now. We can help you work it out. We know that there's also some timelines around, I think I see some people saying that the process went smoothly for them, which is wonderful. If the process isn't going smoothly for you and you are worried that this is going to be something that's going to be a stumbling block between now and the time that we're asking for these letters of interest to be received, reach out to our team, reach out to the ACF team, and we can help you work through it. We really want to make this a process where people can kind of come in and apply, and that we can really look through everybody's really great ideas and see how that lines up with the rural health transformation programs and initiatives. And Jen, I am just going to say, I think we've done a number of walkthroughs, like mentioned in prior office hours, where we've really gone into this. And I appreciate you highlighting opportunities for people to partner, or say we've got multiple contributors, because I think those are some of those technical pieces that we've really heard people asking about. I may, because we have, a limited time together, I may try to grab the reins back just a minute, because I wanted to share a few updates and then really jump into questions and answers, because I think that's where we want to spend the heart of our time. One area that I wanted to highlight, and Jen, I appreciate you sharing the Department of Health's website. And since you're already sharing, if you don't mind, if you want to go back there, I think something that's really helpful for people to be looking at as they look through here, we have an applicant section, an applicant resource. If you scroll down a little bit, right here, you can see our funding opportunities and applicant information center. This is really like a helpful place to look at the letter of interest portal. You can access an applicant resource guide that we've put together to help provide additional information around what you should be thinking about as you kind of look ahead to what a full project implementation could be. We've tried to pull together some of the program requirements that you'll need to know into one place, where you can start to read through those and understand, what do I need to know at this stage? What do I need to know at the next stage? You can see our frequently asked questions. We're hoping to have an update to those this week. But another piece that I wanted to call out on our website is we have posted draft evaluation criteria for these projects, for how are we going, what criteria are we looking at when we are evaluating the proposals that come through this letter of interest process, especially as we move into that full project implementation. So there's a link right here, and we highly encourage anyone interested in applying to review these criteria. If you have comments or suggestions or something you'd like to flag, please go ahead and provide us with comments, provide us with that feedback. We want to finalize these, fairly quickly so that when you move into that full project implementation phase, you have an understanding of what the criteria that we're looking at will be. But we also want to be sure that we didn't miss something. So if we miss something, please flag that for us. And then I also just wanted to note that we've added information about the advisory council and have articulated a project or charter for that group. There's a steering committee that's a smaller, more targeted body to provide feedback and input on the program. And then we're also in the coming, weeks and months going to be building out a broader stakeholder committee. And when we have information about how to apply or nominate somebody to participate in that stakeholder committee, we'll be putting that up on the website too. So really just kind of stay tuned and watch this space, because we are trying to put as many resources for people interested in engaging in the program as possible up here on the website. Also, I recommend that you sign up to receive updates, our email updates, our listserv updates. We'll be communicating out with folks about important dates or opportunities to engage. So we really do recommend that you stay tuned there. And I think for now, I think we'd like to move into the question and answer portion of this. And Emily, Deputy Commissioner Ricci, I'm going to hand this back over to you to facilitate our Q&A section. Jen is fantastic and can help with some of the technical questions. If you have technical questions around the letter of interest process and how does that work? How do you engage? How, pieces like that. And then we've got a whole slew of people who are here to do the best we can to answer your programmatic questions.
Thank you, Betsy, and thank you, Jen. Really appreciate you setting us off and starting off the meeting today. We have a lot of questions and we have just over 40 minutes. So we're going to try to go through these relatively quickly. I do want to start a little bit with the UEI because we had some questions about that. One question that we received, and I just want to make sure we provide clarity, is with regard to the collaborator option, which I think is in the an option, Jen, that we just looked at in the portal. Does creating an account with ACF mean applying for a UEI?
No, it doesn't. Nope. So you can just create your account and then be brought to that LOI that is existing. So it doesn't automatically start a new one.
Okay. Can an application be submitted even if a letter of interest was not provided for a particular project? Betsy, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I think the answer to this is really that the letter of interest and registration, process that's occurring right now, this is the first step. If you would like to submit an application for funding under this very first round of funding, you do need to submit a letter of interest and register through the portal between now and March 11th. That's the first step in the process. And then from there, then we'll move organizations and applications into whatever the appropriate funding pathway may be. And that's if you need planning resources or you need readiness support, we may be able to move you into one of those funding pathways a little bit sooner. If we say this is a great idea, this is ready for full project implementation, you would be moved into that full project implementation. And that's where we would ask more information up front. So it really is a two-stage kind of phased process where this is the first step where you register and tell us what you're interested in doing, give us a sense of your project, and then we'll be able to move ahead from there and really only ask for more detail when and where we need it. I do want to remind everybody that, as we've talked about in the past, this is a 5-year program. And every year there's a new award. So right now we're working underneath the very first year's award of funds. There will be another award next year and following years after that. So we will have multiple opportunities for groups to submit a letter of interest, to register, and to engage in the process. So if you're just learning right now and you're looking at, oh, I think that this could be a really great opportunity for me, I think this could be really impactful for my organization, we're just not ready to go right now between now and March 11th. There will be more opportunities in the future. And this is where we ask for, a little bit of understanding across the board, where I'd love to be able to tell you this is the date when the next one opens. We're not quite there yet, but I'll put a plug back in for our website and for signing up for those updates through our website, because as soon as we're able to announce what the next funding opportunity will be and those dates, we'll be pushing out information again through those emails and posting onto our website.
Thank you. I know timing, we had a lot of questions around timing. One of those, Betsy, is has Alaska determined the dates for the next round of letters of interest? I would say we don't have exact dates at this point, but do you want to add anything?
No, yes, we don't have exact dates at this point. And I think that our immediate focus is supporting everybody through this very first round and moving through. And then as we start to look ahead, we know that the state's next funding year cycle, our next budget period, begins at the end of October of 2026. And we know that the state team has a kind of continuing application that we will submit to our federal partners at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Looking ahead to year two, that will be something we submit this summer. So as we can, we're going to try to line up some of the request processes for the next year's funding cycle to give us as much information as we can, going into us needing to communicate that to our federal partners. So I would just say stay tuned, and we will, ideally be able to move through that next round relatively quickly.
We have one more question on timing before I want to move to some other topics. And I'm not sure, this is probably maybe Jen for you or someone else from Alaska Community Foundation. How long after the letters of intent closes will applicants be notified if they have been chosen to move forward? I have a general time frame.
Well, I see that our CEO, Alex McKay, is on the call, so I'm hopeful that she will take this one.
Yeah, we believe we'll really have a much better sense when we know what the quantity is, but we believe it'll be about between 4 to 6 weeks. 6 on the outside.
So now I want to shift a little bit to some of the questions we are getting about letters of intent and entities that have multiple ideas or multiple projects. And so one of the questions we had is, if we're interested in pursuing multiple projects, is it preferred to submit multiple letters of interest, or should we submit one letter of interest with options for multiple projects? How should potential applicants be thinking about this?
This is a great question, and one that we've been getting from a lot of organizations, where they say, I'm doing this work over here, I'm doing this work over here, I really have this need. I'm also partnering with these other agencies to do some planning in this arena. How do I unpack all of these parts and pieces? And so I think the general advice that we're giving people is, one, to think about the whole body of everything that you propose and make sure that it's something that your organization has the capacity to do and to execute on this first year, if we're able to be in the lucky position of saying yes to everything that you want to do. And so that does take a little bit of kind of refinement on your side. We have organizations that say, if I could here are all the things I want to do. I can't do them all at once, but I do know that they're all good ideas. We do want you to put forward kind of a suite of options that you could do if we could say yes to everything. Because if we can, we don't want you to come back to us and say, ooh, just kidding, it was actually this one or that one. And I caution that because, again, I want people to be thinking about there are future funding cycles and future opportunities to ask for support to engage in these projects. So really think about, what do you have the capacity to do in the nearer term for this first round, and then maybe start to do some planning for what you might submit in future rounds for some of those other pieces that you don't quite have capacity to do today. But really, I think the heart of the question is, I have all of these projects that I'm doing now. Do you want one letter of interest for my entire organization, or do you want them to be separated out? And to some extent, I think it's helpful if you can say, if this is a discrete project, put in one letter of interest for each discrete project, because that allows us to look at that body of work and that project on its own. So if you have, say you're interested in some capital improvements or renovations so that you can serve a new population base, or so that you can grow your business in a way that supports the rural health transformation initiatives, think of everything that you would need that's kind of dependent on each other, that's together, and that's maybe one letter of interest that you want to put forward. So say you have that going, but then you also would really like to partner with other similarly situated organizations to do some planning around how you can address a common or shared challenge. That would be a different letter of interest, where you would say, we have this need over here, but my organization has this need here. So we do want you to be thinking about them in kind of discrete projects, and then also, or, discrete kind of ideas, and then also be thinking across your entire group of what you're putting forward. Do you have the capacity to move ahead with all of it if we're able to say yes to all of it?
I wanted to add one thing. By having separate letters of interest, your project is still alive, so if it's moved to that stage, it might not fit this round, it might be the next round. And, there might be some, refinements you want to do, but it's really helpful for us to be able to track them separately. So it would still exist rather than the rest of the projects kind of not being addressed.
Thank you. I think that actually bleeds in really well to a lot of questions we got about partnerships, right? And so we have a question about, will the Alaska Community Foundation facilitate making introductions if a letter of interest indicates that the project is still working on recruiting partners?
What I do know is there is a question about whether you are interested in partnering. And when we do take a look at it, we will be grouping things that seem to go together. We're still working out what kind of technical assistance might be offered, and then we would work with the Department of Health in terms of which ways to go forward. There really could be a cluster that all goes together, but we'll try to flag those things and see what we can move forward, in coordination with the Department of Health. I think there will be a lot of that, and because we want to see lots of partnerships.
And I think that feeds into another question we got, which is along the same lines, which is, will Alaska Community Foundation potentially pair or group letters of interest that are complementary? For example, tech and services into a single funded project.
We'll prepare a report of what there is and kind of identify the ones that seem to be aligned. We wouldn't necessarily be making the decisions about what's paired, but we will highlight the ones that are, and then working with the Department of Health to decide if there's a next step, that aligns with priorities.
Another question we got has to do with pass-through grants. So, for example, if a borough applied for and received funding to upgrade equipment for volunteer fire departments that supports their borough fire and EMS services, could the borough submit a proposal to provide equipment upgrades in the form of a grant to the volunteer departments? It's a little bit convoluted, but how should we be thinking about? I read that as what is the primary entity that is applying for these funds? And how does that flow through to other partners that they might be working with?
I think, that's, we hear from a lot of organizations that want to kind of work in partnership and have funding flow to one entity, and then that funding can flow out, or maybe they need to, whether it's, supporting volunteer firefighters with kind of granted money to help them support what they're doing, or contracting with an entity to provide services with the grant funds that you receive. Our understanding is that's all allowable. We just want you to articulate what that looks like. What does that shape and size look like? Who are you intending to distribute funds out to? How will that work? I think one area that we don't have as much clarity as we would like is around reporting, and what kind of reporting we're going to need back from entities. This is where you've heard me say for the last couple of weeks, every bit of this program is growing up at the same time. With our federal partners, the reporting requirements are kind of growing up as we are also growing up this process. And so we will share out information around reporting and what we're going to need, people participating in this funding to be prepared to provide back to the department, so we can provide that back to CMS. So that would be maybe one flag I would put out there, that if you're looking at kind of being a centralized organization that supports other organizations through this, that you'll also want to have a plan for how are you going to support them with some of those reporting needs, which we'll share more as we know about that. But in that instance, I think that would be one letter of interest that comes in from the borough or the organization that's saying we're hoping to receive funds, and here's how we intend to distribute and spread and use those in our community.
I want to move a little bit to budget for a second. We have a lot of budget questions coming in. So we have questions that are surrounding, if either a local government or a company wishes to submit a proposal, do they need to provide the budget information for their project, or should the budget for the entire organization, whether that's, a government, a department, an entity, should that be provided? So how should they be thinking about responding to the budget questions in the letters of interest?
I think what we're looking for in the letters of interest, and Alex, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there's a question in there that's asking about, what's your operating budget right now? And I think that's where we're looking for a general ballpark of the size and shape of the operating budget for your organization, so that we can understand how your requested, the ballpark of your requested funds through this grant program overlay on top of that. I think it's helpful to understand, are you an organization where right now, you operate on a shoestring? Maybe you have, everybody's part-time and you're working under $20,000 a year and you're asking for $20 million. That's helpful information for us to have. I think it just helps assess a little bit, your organization's capacity. But Alex, is there anything that you want to share around some of the budget questions that are in the letter of interest?
As far as, so primarily we really want to know the budget for the project, but any questions about your operational budget, it is, as Betsy said, it's just to understand your capacity. And so when we look at the proposals, we're just sort of looking at, alignment with the fit of the program, the capacity, also, is that some area where you might be, if depending on your size, your experience, is that an area where maybe you would need a planning grant? Or so those are just all factors that we consider. In the request for full proposal, there may be a little more depth of questions, but just really at a high level.
So we have another question related to budget, and that's really, is there a minimum request amount per the letters of interest? And conversely, is there a maximum amount in the letters of interest that entities should be thinking about as they prepare a budget for their project?
I wouldn't say that we have a minimum or a maximum at this point. I think it's, we're trying to get a sense of, what do you need? What resources really do you need in order to kind of move forward with your project? I think on the minimum side, if you really don't need that much in order to do something that's big and transformational, let us know. And then on the flip side, we're not putting a maximum out there now, so that we can really understand the size and shape of the projects that people have and be able to see how they fit together. I will say that, right now at this stage for letters of interest, we're looking for ballparks, right? We're looking for, give us a general sense of the amount that you think that you would need for this project. Help us understand kind of how to move your project into the sorting for the next phase. Those projects that do move into the full implementation proposal part of this process will be asked for more details around their budget. And I also think that as we move forward, there are certain, I think, areas of where there are certain capped budget categories for the overall program. And if you are proposing uses of funds that fall under some of those capped budget categories, you may expect that the department will come back to you. We may ask for more questions. We may want to understand a little bit more about what you're thinking. And so some of those capped categories are, think about capital expenditures and infrastructure pieces. So that's like renovating existing buildings, replacing or upgrading existing equipment. Those are a certain type of use where CMS has said you can only, Alaska as an entire state across your entire award, you can only spend 20% of your funds on these capital infrastructure expenditures. So if you're looking at really needing to kind of renovate a portion of your building in order for your project to succeed, in order for you to serve a new population or transform the way you deliver care, please go ahead and propose that. But recognize that the state has collectively about $54.5 million in this first year award to spend on that type of expense. So if that's what part of your need is, we may ask you a few more questions. There's also caps on the amount that collectively we can direct towards administrative expenses. So those expenses that are related to maintaining and reporting on the grant. Some of those that, the state needs to use funds in order to build up the administrative pieces and processes for community entities to be able to apply. But if you are, an organization and you say, wow, in order to engage in this program, I really need to direct a portion of this funds to supporting the reporting aspects of it, tell us about that. Tell us what those expenses are, and we'll work to integrate that into the overall budget. So those are just some areas to be thinking about.
Betsy, that builds off of some of the other questions we got, which is understanding the caps. So we have a 20% cap on capital for any specific award year. We have a 10% cap on admin costs. And those admin costs may include things like readiness grants, planning grants, or other costs. What other caps are there that people should just be aware of? It's really incumbent on us, the Department of Health, to figure out how to manage those caps. So this is more awareness for you, not because there's anything that any action entities need to take.
Certainly. So other capped areas include provider payments. So I think you've heard us say before that we can't pay for services that are already covered by health insurance, or that there's already a funding stream for it. But if you're testing a new service line, or if you're trying to serve a population that doesn't have access to a certain service through their current coverage, I think an example that we think about sometimes is, if you want to build out a remote patient monitoring program, and some insurance pays for that and some insurance doesn't, and you would like to test it for the group who doesn't have access to getting that covered under their current health insurance, we can pilot and we can test some of those services and provide provider payments. But there is a cap, a 15% cap across the entire award for the state for provider payments. So again, think of you're trying out a new service, you're piloting, a new setting somewhere where there isn't a current funding stream for that. Another capped category is if you have an electronic medical record system in your organization and you look at it and you say, I cannot upgrade this. I can't add new modules. I can't add new widgets. I really just need a new one. I want to burn it down. I want to start over. I would like to start from scratch. If you are doing a full replace on your electronic medical record system and it was previously high-tech certified, meaning that it has previously passed some federal requirements for EMRs where they basically have said this is a modern compliant system, but you say, I really just need a new one. This one isn't working for us. That full replace, there's a 5% cap across the program on those full replacements of EMRs that were previously high-tech certified. Now, if you have electronic medical record systems and maybe your organization, for whatever reason, has multiple, like you've got 3 of them that are in different parts of your organization and none of them talk to each other, and you don't understand why, and you would like to upgrade and you'd like to integrate and you'd like to build out interoperability so that you can contribute information into the health information exchange a little easier, those upgrades and enhancements on your core system, those are not subject to the cap, to our understanding. So if you, again, just be thinking about if you're doing a full replace. There's one more capped category, which is around a technology innovation catalyst fund. And that is really meant to be a funding vehicle that states can use to use rural health dollars to invest in emerging health technology that isn't receiving support through kind of other federal resources or kind of the other market forces aren't really investing in this type of new and emerging health technology, that you can spend, I believe it's up to 10% capped at $20 million for that. That's an idea that the state is interested in pursuing, perhaps a little bit later on down the road, but just be thinking about that if you got really excited about the health, the Health Innovation Catalyst Fund, that there is a cap on the amount of funding that can go through that channel too.
So again, this is all for us to manage. It's good for you to be aware of this because it does impact, right, how we have to think about balancing awards and the work that ACF is doing as well, but you don't have to manage that yourselves. We will manage that. I want to move into indirect costs though, because I know we've had a couple of questions about that. So one is, indirect costs. How should entities be thinking about that? Again, we have caps on administrative costs, so there's some pretty strict requirements we have that don't align with the ability to charge indirect costs the way that we're used to. And then thinking about that, can expenses like computers, subscriptions, can those be added to the budget? What about stipends, right? How should entities be thinking about incorporating the costs that they need to do the work as part of their submission?
So first, I'll start with indirect costs. And again, as we mentioned before, there's a 10% cap across the entire award for how much we can spend on administrative expenses. And those are those administrative expenses that are in service of kind of maintaining, reporting on, engaging, and managing the grant, the funds themselves. And because of that cap, because we know that makes those administrative dollars really limited when you look across the entire program and all the entities that we anticipate requesting funding under this, we have decided to ask entities to propose all of their costs to us when you get to that phase, right? Not in the letter of interest phase, but when you get to your full budget build out, we would like to see all of your direct costs that you need. So again, like I mentioned earlier, if you have staff where you say, my admin team is going to take on an incredible reporting burden in order to do this, we'd like to be able to charge a portion of their time in support of that grant. Let us know what that is, and that can be directed towards the administrative expenses. But if you have program staff where you say, I need to be able to pay a person to run this program during the demonstration period, that's something that can be a programmatic expense to our understanding. And we would want to charge that person's time to kind of account for it under our programmatic work because they're working in support of one of these initiatives. If you have equipment needs, if you need a new computer in order to engage in it, if you propose that through direct expenses rather than kind of saying, oh, we'll catch it up in our administrative, indirect costs that we throw in there, that allows us to attribute those direct expenses to the program side or to the administrative side, depending on what you need them for. So that's really what we want people to be thinking about is, are these administrative activities that will help me manage and maintain the grant, or are these programmatic expenses that will help me manage and maintain the program and the service that we are trying to build out underneath the grant? And putting your expenses forward using that direct methodology helps us attribute them so that we can really maximize those administrative dollars, which are limited across the program.
Okay, I'm going to answer a couple of these simple questions real fast to get them out of the queue, and then I want to shift back a little bit more to some of the LOI questions we have, knowing that we're kind of in that home stretch. So for state agencies, has the process for state agencies to apply opened yet? Yes, it has, and the heads of your department have instructions on that. So reach out to the head of your department if you are a state agency. Do not submit it through the letter of interest through the Alaska Community Foundation. Next question I'm going to go to is about allowable costs, and I'm just going to kick these out pretty fast, which is, would land purchases be an allowable expense in some circumstances? Betsy, the answer to that is no, correct?
Yes.
Yes to no.
Yes to no.
Not allowable. Okay. Next question. Can you buy a vehicle with RHTP funds? That's a little more complicated, Betsy.
That one's a maybe. I think what we've seen from CMS is that they have said that they are open to vehicle expenses or vehicle purchases, but I think it's done on a case-by-case basis. So if you need to purchase a vehicle in order to move your project forward, please tell us about it. And this is an example of where we would need to work with CMS to understand, does this fit? Is this allowable? And we may need to do a little bit of back and forth with the applicant.
I would say this. There has to be a very, very strong tie and a reason why there's no other solution in order for this to achieve the goal that you want. This is not intended to buy new cars. This is intended to transform how we provide healthcare. Okay, so think about that, and there has to be a strong tie. Question is will limited construction or renovation projects be considered? And if so, what are the parameters? I'm just going to say yes. We're not sure on what the parameters are right now. We are not the only state asking that. And so we will be evaluating projects with CMS as they come through.
And again, I would just say at this point, what we understand is that this is, think of renovation, think of retrofitting your space. If it's a major construction project where you're adding on to a building, the answer is going to be no. We can't purchase land. You can't demo a building. If you have a building and you're like, this one's got to go and I need to come in and rebuild something, we can't do the demo costs. This is really meant to be kind of upgrades, renovations, that type of work. We do know that there's going to be questions around, does it fit? Does it not? Is this major? Is this not? And I would say at this point, please put forward what your need is and describe your project. And if you are proposing a renovation that you think maybe skews a little heavily towards the construction side, but maybe not, that's where, we'll work with CMS so that they can understand what the proposal is and get some more answers there.
I think last question for now on allowable costs before we jump to a few other topics we might circle back is, where can we find information about whether our ask is allowable, specifically things like food or vehicles, where we can look it up? And we have a guide that we have put forward because this information is available through a lot of different resources right now. There's a lot of different FAQs at the federal level, the state level. Our team has put together a guide. We will put that in the link, and it should give you the information we know, recognizing it is changing frequently as we begin to build these programs out. So with that, I am going to go back to the letters of interest because we had some very specific questions about that. So if we maximize character counts on the letter of interest application, can we also attach a Word document with additional project details?
I think the answer to that is no, but I'm going to look to ACF to confirm that for me. Looks like it's confirmed. So really, you guys, at this point, I get it. You have amazing ideas. You want to tell us all of it. We do want to hear your amazing ideas. We really need you to be able to provide the detail or provide that information kind of limited to the character counts that are included in the letter of interest process. This is meant to be think of it as, your elevator pitch, maybe not like your really short elevator pitch, but you're like, we got stuck stopping at every flight or, at every floor in a relatively tall building. And we're going to tell you enough detail so you can understand what it is, but recognize that there will be opportunities for you to provide more detail around your project and around your need as we move through.
Question, can an LLC that is headquartered in Alaska with no partnerships receive grant funds?
Yes. If you have an eligible program, if your project moves through the selection process, this is not something that is limited solely to nonprofits. We are trying to cast a fairly wide net.
If we have an idea, but it is still developing and likely won't be ready until next year, should we submit a letter of interest this round to get feedback?
I think it depends on what your need is. If you have an idea and you're still building it out and that planning process is already going and you have the resources you need to continue that planning process, I would ask that you hold it until you're ready to put it forward. If you think that you need resources, if you need some planning support, you need some partnership support, then I would consider putting it forward now. But Alex, is there anything that you would like to add about this, about how people should be thinking about those pieces?
It's really hard to say. The idea is that put forward things that are an idea that you think are plausible and possible. The more developed they are, obviously those are the ones that are going to move, to the implementation phase. But we really want everyone to put forward the ideas. We want to keep you in the pipeline. If possible, if you're eligible and aligned, we really want to see if there's some way that a readiness grant might be appropriate or a planning grant might be appropriate. It sort of gets you in the queue. But you'll need some development of it. If you don't feel ready for it at all, it's probably best to wait. I think, does that answer the question, do you think?
I think so. I mean, to follow up with that, there's a little bit of a theme here, right? There's an emphasis on organizational readiness and sustainability of the programming. Can our project proposal be written with a dependency on a subsequent 4 years of RHTP funding, or would that make the project unsustainable?
I think the way that I would answer that is that this funding is not meant to solely support a project for perpetuity, right? This is time limited funding. It's available now and for the next handful of years in order to help projects get started, to help them get up off the ground, to test out ideas and prove them out. To say if we had these resources, then we would be able to provide and deliver care and services in this way, and that becomes sustainable. So, without knowing the details of your project, if you're saying, here's my first year, and the way that it's sustainable is that we get funding in the second year and the third and the fourth and the fifth, and then you don't really have kind of insight or a plan or thoughts about how that might be sustainable beyond that, I would maybe recommend you circle back to your sustainability planning and think about, okay, this is a really great service idea, but like, what is our long-term plan for funding this out? That said, I know that there are a lot of organizations that are looking at multi-year projects, and especially in the first year where we all know that the spend window is a little bit shorter given where we are. It's really difficult to say, well, I want to get this up and off the ground, but I really do need, a little more funding in the next year and the next year in order to prove out my idea or to build up these services or to do what it is that I'm hoping to achieve. For that, I would say, please, I think we ask information about your anticipated future funding needs, provide that information to us as best you can. We're in this bit of a place where we can't guarantee the next year's funding because we don't know what that award is going to be on the federal side coming into the state. But it is really helpful for us, and we are trying to, support and think through what does it look like for these multi-year projects, recognizing that we want to be able to support some of these things that take a little bit more time.
I just want to piggyback that from the multi-year funding perspective. We know that many projects may require multiple years of funding. Again, the funds have to be expended within a very short time frame. I've seen a lot of questions too about that time frame in this. Instead of, I think, spending time talking through that in this, because we spent a lot of time on it in the past, it's very important that as you consider your letters of interest and you consider applying, you go online and you look at the time frame for spending, because it is very short. We cannot commit to any funding beyond the year that we have been awarded, but we want to know if you're engaging in a multi-year project, right? So that we can try to think about how to plan for that in future years. But just like you can't commit legislative appropriations years in advance, we can't commit to multi-year funding without knowing what our funding awards will be in future years. So, quick question, can our project be half planning and half implementation? And I think that also leads into this other question we got, which is it possible that letters of interest or projects will be partially approved or partially funded? Is it all or nothing? What if I'm in this weird in-between place where I need some planning, I'm close to implementation, I'm not sure where the line is?
I have some thoughts, but Alex, I'm wondering if you want to help people understand how they should be thinking about how they may have within one project or even within one organization, multiple types of needs that will kind of bubble up through this process.
And the better you can explain that, the better we can provide the support that you need. We do imagine that there will be some there will be a lot of planning involved, particularly in the beginning phase. And so that would be appropriate to put down. And where we can see there's a need, I think we actually ask if there is support that you would like, and you can kind of put that in there. That we would share that with the Department of Health and then see what we could possibly provide through either a readiness or a planning grant. But those are the things that we do expect to see.
Another question as I move around, I want to go down to assistance. If we have specific questions prior to submitting, what is the best email? And are we on top of our emails? And I think that can change sometimes on a daily basis. We are doing our best, but some days we get more questions than others.
And I will say, you know, I think we can have some folks put the 2 emails in the chat, but there's an email that goes to the Department of Health. That's the alaska.gov, ends in alaska.gov email address. And if you have questions that are kind of around the program as a whole and like, is this idea, you know, within the realm of what you were thinking? Do you think this type of expense may be allowable? Those types of programmatic questions, please send them to, I believe it's RHTP at alaska.gov. And we have a team, we have a number of people that are on top of it, and we really appreciate everybody's patience. I know sometimes the answers have been slower than we had hoped, but I will say right now we are really watching that inbox. We are committed to you know, providing responses back to people as quickly as possible, especially recognizing we have a little over a week to go with this. Then we also, if you have questions about the letter of interest portal or that application process, or something isn't working for you as you're trying to fill out the registration, that's where we'd like you to send an email to RHTP at alaskacf.org. And that goes to the Alaska Community Foundation team that is supporting the application process and the portal. And they've got folks who are watching those emails and providing that technical assistance and those resources. If you send the email to the wrong side, don't worry about it. We will help get you to the right place so that you can get your questions answered. You may have, hey, I have these questions about the portal, but I also want to make sure that my questions around the program are getting answered too. You can send it to both of us and we'll help you out.
Yeah, and even if you send it to, you know, one of us and we need to share it with the other, we will. And then as there are answers, and you know, we will be sharing this information. And so over time we'll all have the information, but in this beginning time, as we're kind of working with CMS and really defining things, but eventually we're going to have much more, you know, better guidelines that, you know, we will have as well.
So I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to ask one more question. And then actually, Alex, I just kind of would love for kind of words of advice from your perspective as applicants are kind of thinking about this. Last question though, if a letter of interest is not selected during the first round, will we need to submit for round 2, or does it stay in the queue for consideration? So I'll throw that one out, and then words of wisdom, Alex.
That's so funny. I actually have that up from Michelle Chapin. I was thinking like, I'm going to answer that in the chat. So eligible LOIs that are aligned, you know, so they're eligible. So first, if you're not eligible, that would be a no, and you'd receive a notice of you know, why by category. And it's aligned with our HTP priorities. That would stay in the queue. It's possible that it would be, you know, put in a group that would possibly get a readiness grant or a planning grant, or it would stay until the next round, which I think we anticipate sometime in late fall next year. I think, you know, basically I'm thinking, and we haven't really defined it for sure, but there'd be about at least 2 times a year where these would come back up. So you'd still be in the queue and you'd get some feedback.
Thank you. As we have 2 minutes left, I think there's been a lot of resources in the chat for everyone to use. I know we didn't get through all of the questions, but hopefully we touched on some big buckets. Alex, what should people be thinking about kind of in this last week?
Well, just so you know, this was really all designed so that innovation can happen and really support you wherever you are. Put your idea forward. You know, we'll if it's not ineligible and not aligned, you will get some feedback. And so, you know, feel confident. It's not a, you know, one swing and you're out. You know, this is a 5-year program. Innovation takes time, and just put your ideas forward as, you know, as completely as you can. And we will ask for clarification if something's not clarified. So don't be hesitant. But as Betsy and Emily have said, put forward what you think is possible that you could do.
And be bold at the same time, right?
Be bold, yeah. It's innovation.
Okay. I think we are about at the end of the hour. Thank you all again. Betsy, do you want to close out?
I think just, we really appreciate everybody's time and energy that you all have invested into this. I think it's a heavy lift every time you have to kind of take your ideas and articulate them on paper, no matter how well fleshed out they are already. So we really appreciate the time and the effort that's gone into this from all of you. And again, I would just, remind everybody you have until 11:59 p.m. Alaska time, next Wednesday, March 11th, to submit your letter of interest, your registration process. Please remember it's daylight savings time is coming up, so that might throw you off. And if you have small kids like me, just buckle up and get ready for next week to be exciting. But we're here to help. Please send emails if you have questions, and we're just really excited to see what comes out of this first round.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.